The red line illustrates salmon migration routes, so you can see them following some of the coastlines. Salmon net fishing areas are captured with these sort of pink polygons, which you can see in some of the inlets and some of the sort of the coastal areas. You've got represented with cross-hatching some of the watersheds, which will drain into this marine area. Sponge reefs in the red blobs up and down Hecate Strait and into Queen Charlotte Sound. Corals, all these little dots that you see captured everywhere. Areas important for trawling in these green polygons. Red stars, areas where there have been exploratory drilling for oil and gas. Areas important for orca habitat in this white cross-hatching. And lastly, this white line being cruise ship routes up and down the coast. So it's just sort of a smattering. We could add all kinds of other layers to this map and it would look even busier, just to sort of give an indication of the many different things that happen in oceans. Okay, so what is PENSEMA? There's a few sort of key messages about what this initiative is intended to do. We're intending to balance different objectives for oceans, whether those be ecological or socioeconomic or cultural. We're looking to improve that integration of how multiple uses are managed. And hopefully, by virtue of this, create some stability and a bit more certainty in how oceans are being managed and where we're going with our management of oceans. By virtue of a process like this, where we're looking to bring different interested parties into the same room, we hope to strengthen some of the relationships that exist between different individuals with different constituencies or interests, and ultimately contribute to more sustainable management of oceans. That's the overall goal. There's a few things that PENSEMA is not. So it's not intended to be an exercise in creating a new layer of regulations. It's not intended to restrict any legislative authorities. Rather, we're working with existing legislative authorities to implement something that gets to, I guess, Jack, it was your question, something that in the end, we develop that governments are interested in supporting. So we're working with those different legislative authorities to develop something they have an interest in being a part of. And just to sort of restate that in a different way, we're not sort of looking to sort of supersede the ability of different agencies to carry out their regulatory activities. Again, we're sort of working with them in a way that supports what they do and provides some broad direction that has that broad support among different groups for what they do. What are we looking to actually generate out of this process? I think we can make an easy link to what we're doing today to this first bullet. We're looking to develop some of that common understanding of what are the different characteristics of this region. What do we understand are the important things that we want to try and manage for? We're looking to develop an ecosystem-based management framework, again, that includes those objectives for respecting social, economic, and ecological health of this area. And ultimately, we want to develop a marine spatial plan that sort of gives us some guidance for, if these are our objectives, where in space do we want to try and achieve them? Gives us some guidance in that respect. We also want to be able to link the things that we develop to those who have some sort of responsibility for actually implementing them. So this point about sort of an accountability matrix is about connecting the different agencies' roles and responsibilities to the pieces of this plan to identify who needs to be involved with what parts of what we develop to ensure that this does get successfully implemented and that those people are a part of this process. And then another really important piece of this is not just what we develop in terms of the plan itself, but also the institutional arrangements. That's a bit of a fancy term, but the committees or the groups that we may bring together who are going to have an ongoing role in providing input to how oceans get managed, in providing input to keeping whatever we develop in terms of a plan up to date, relevant 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 20 years from now. And lastly, clearly, we need a strategy for implementing all of this. So who can be involved in this process? Well, the short answer is everyone. If you've got an interest and you're part of a local community, or you've got responsibilities related to some management of this or what have you, then you probably should be a part of this process.
Is there anything preliminary coming out around these different points in the draft document that was described in more detail?
Yeah, so if you'll bear with me, I'll get to that. Okay. So where are we now? We've done some work to develop a bit of an understanding or knowledge base, and again, that's part of what we're doing here. We've also done that on sort of the ecosystem side of things. So some of you in the room may be familiar with a report called the Ecosystem Overview and Assessment. We're doing something similar with this socioeconomic and cultural overview and assessment. So we're looking at these as sort of background pieces that can give us some useful information that will inform the planning process. We've also done some work to develop some governance structures on the federal side, on the First Nations side. There are also relationships on oceans management issues between federal and provincial governments. So there's a few things there that are useful to inform what we do with respect to the PENSEMA initiative. And there are many of you here who would have also attended a forum last March, where we sort of kicked off the PENSEMA initiative. So we've had some large meetings that brought together a number of different groups to sort of become familiar with the initiative. Since that forum, we've had a number of additional meetings to sort of report on progress and provide further opportunities for input and feedback to what we're doing. In terms of our current priorities, Mike, this gets to your question. Number one is we are looking to very soon release a document that will outline in draft how do we plan to engage stakeholders in a structured and ongoing way in this initiative. So that will be hopefully captured for input and feedback from communities in what we're terming a stakeholder engagement strategy. So we're looking to release this in March. Following that, we would be coming back out to communities to ask, what do you think about what's in that strategy? Does it reflect how you want to see yourselves engaged? Does it give you different opportunities for engagement, etc.? The other document that will be coming out, hopefully in the very near future as well, is a bit more detail about, well, what is the planning process itself going to look like? What are those outputs going to look like, and how are we going to achieve them? What are the steps we need to take in order to get there? And the other thing that we're working on as a current priority is this piece of work called the SECOA, which is just an acronym for Socio-Economic and Cultural Overview and Assessment, if you don't get tired of saying that over and over. So the point of that work is to identify different marine activities, identify different important cultural features, community and regional profiles, and ask ourselves, where are these things going in the future? What are the trends? Where are they taking us? What do we need to be sort of aware of? Because that can inform how we spend our time in a planning process. So just to review the kind of progress we've made and where we're going, last March we had the PENSEMA Forum. This led to a number of different products out of that forum which captured some of what we heard. We issued a paper last June which sort of outlined some of the issues, the opportunities, and the challenges that the PENSEMA initiative faces. So that's actually available here today on the side table for those of you who haven't seen it. You can pick up a copy. We launched a new website last summer. We began to actually go out and have some initial conversations with different stakeholder groups and interested parties about what might an engagement strategy look like. So we had a series of meetings about that in October. Some of you may have attended those meetings or heard of them. This was basically an opportunity to provide some very early input to what the document we're going to be releasing in March might look like. We also started collecting some of the information and preparing for this workshop by launching the SECOA in December. And we began some thinking around what does that process design look like? What are the steps of the planning process going to look like? So where are we going from here? Just as a very brief overview, one of the real key pieces in the very near future is once we have an engagement strategy we're comfortable with, we need to convene some sort of stakeholder planning committee that brings stakeholders together to play a part in sort of the development of this plan. That committee is not going to be the only place to get involved, but it is going to be an important piece.